In this video, let's compare two operating systems, OriginOS 6 and ColorOS 16. To be honest, while this is called a comparison, the main purpose is to see what advantages each has and in which areas they can do better. This video will focus on the visual experience. First is the UI design. On the lock screen, both systems adopted a glass textured clock this year. Looking at the consistency and coordination of the entire interface, ColorOS has done a very good job. The top status bar is symmetrical left and right, and the bottom icons use the same glass material as the clock, making it look very balanced. In OriginOS, the status bar section is asymmetrical left and right, and the two icons at the bottom do not use the same glass material as the clock. The overall look isn't quite as balanced. Regarding clock editing, within a certain range on ColorOS, the clock length can be stretched or shortened at will to adapt to different types of wallpapers. OriginOS has 3 height gears to choose from, and the height automatically changes following the number of notifications. This is a well-designed aspect, but it gets affected by the fingerprint scanner's position. Once the fingerprint scanner is turned on, it shortens the clock. Especially when there are notifications, the display effect is very poor. Although you can remove the fingerprint icon via facial recognition unlocking, there is still that split second where you see that uncomfortable display state. The design is a bit makeshift. Here, they could learn from the way ColorOS handles it. Adding a stacked option might be better. It makes you wonder why Huawei made 3D facial recognition standard across their entire series this year, or why they use side-mounted fingerprints as a solution. The reason is that under-screen fingerprints have too big of an impact on UI design. When setting wallpapers, ColorOS has a wallpaper zoom switch. When I used ColorOS in the past, I actually had a headache regarding this issue. For example, with this wallpaper. In the past, it was in a default zoomed-in state because it wanted a wallpaper scaling animation when going from the lock screen to the desktop. But the wallpaper looked very ugly that way. Now you can turn off the zoom, and it looks much more comfortable. Previously, I kept wondering if ColorOS could implement this feature, and unexpectedly, they actually did it. In the Notification Center and Control Center, OriginOS places the lock screen, notification center, and control center together, creating a distinct sense of separation. It feels like a patched together version of the system. Currently, the UI consistency isn't high. ColorOS, on the other hand, has adapted the latest materials for both interfaces. Notifications and Android apps are well categorized. Furthermore, both notifications and icons have a Gaussian blur effect. When you press down, the bottom even lights up. Including when we slide the notification banner, you can see the buttons here also carry the Gaussian blur material. So the overall consistency completion of ColorOS is very high. In the multitasking and desktop editing interfaces, ColorOS has adapted the latest materials. OriginOS has adapted multitasking, but the icons are too small and the white transparency is too low, making them indistinct. On the status bar icon front, both systems can hide them, making the status bar look cleaner. Next, we come to the desktop. The gap between the two systems isn't large here. The customizability of folders is the same. With the evolution of advertising technology, there are now ads on app icons. These can be solved by redrawing third-party app icons. I found 16 apps in the App Store here. After turning on Icon Redraw, ColorOS does a better job, removing the ads from all 16 app icons. OriginOS, however, still has ads on some icons. These things actually won't affect your daily use, but when you see these psoriasis-like ads, there will inevitably be some discomfort and eyesores, even if only for a second or two. This might be the reason why ColorOS's reputation is slowly improving. It really pays attention to some detailed aspects. When long pressing icons, OriginOS seems like it hasn't been updated in a long time. Whether it's the rounded corners or the materials, it's the design language from several years ago. OriginOS is slightly better here, but it's not using the absolute latest materials either. Regarding icon editing, ColorOS allows you to freely zoom in and out within a certain range. App icon names can also be adjusted to suit people with different aesthetics, and it makes using third-party icons very convenient. Just install and you're good to go. Then we can find the installed icons in the icon interface. OriginOS has 3 size gears for icons that can be adjusted, but you cannot adjust the size of the app names. Regarding icon customization, I feel the Origin team has slightly misunderstood. What everyone wants is third-party icon packs from the theme store, not choosing icons individually within the theme to mix and match. Regarding their respective voice assistants, I won't talk about the marquee lights here. I mainly want to talk about the bottom dock icons. ColorOS has added a semi-transparent black gradient layer between the icons and the wallpaper, making it look more transparent. It also highlights these 2 clickable icons, plus the icon size is large. We can easily see the fine details inside the icon. Origin's icons are also very exquisite. Looking closely, there are even sparkling light effects around them. However, they blend into the desktop a bit too much. The icon size is also relatively small, and the overall perception isn't prominent. Being located in the corners also makes them not very easy to operate, including the light effects in the control center. When clicked on, the bottom will glow, but at our normal clicking speed, you can't see the light under the icon. There are also some buttons inside settings. At first glance, you can't see anything special, but if you look closely, shadows exist beneath the buttons. animations. How should I put it? Many things are designed with too much restraint. Restrained to the point where you don't even feel them. Unless your user is very detail-oriented, like me, so I can feel it, but not much. The visual stimulation should be a bit more strong, displayed openly and boldly. Regarding the atomic island and fluid cloud, the display effect of OriginOS is more immersive. After all, we turn this feature on. After expanding, logically speaking, it should stick to the island. Moreover, it isn't pure black. When playing music, the bottom is dynamic. When screen recording, it projects the same red color as the icon. It looks more vibrant. ColorOS, on the other hand, is not as immersive. Next is animation. First, the unlock animation. OriginOS has a more elastic or bouncy display effect. ColorOS looks relatively flat and not lively. Regarding the process of launching an app entering the island, OriginOS does a better job. Opening multitasking, OriginOS has a zoom back animation. ColorOS basically has no animation. It disappears abruptly. When opening multitasking in full screen, it also moves up and down along with the status bar. It looks quite strange because ColorOS's fluid cloud is bound to the status bar. However, there is one thing I really like: the desktop voice assistant animation. It starts from wherever you slide and returns to where you stop. The animation is very silky smooth. Previously, opening it started from the bottom, but returning went to the icon. It felt very disconnected. Now it's fixed. But there is still a small problem. My folder is on the third page. Currently, when I return, it goes to the first page. So this part of the detail could be optimized a bit more. Regarding the swipe back or negative screen animation, both allow for the from where it comes back to where it goes animation. It's consistent with the desktop icons. Within the app, similar animations can also be executed. This is a place where both have done relatively well. In addition, ColorOS can also execute this operation in some third-party apps. They can all execute this from where it comes back to where it goes animation, but some apps just don't work. They don't have this animation. So what I'm curious about is whether it adapted to a certain rule or if it made optimizations for specific apps individually. For app opening animations, both are fine and very smooth. However, regarding the detailed parts, look at the status bar color. ColorOS can switch colors in real time. However, you can see that there is a delay in the color switch unless we wait a moment after closing the app or switch back and forth between opened apps, then its response is instant. There is also the switching between the notification center and the control center. If we slide slowly, we can see the control center scales down and the notification center pans over. This is the first animation. If I slide a bit faster, we can see the control center moves to the left and the control center scales and moves. This is the second animation. If I slide to the control center and wait a moment, we can see that this animation changes again. The notification icons at the bottom have a popping out layering effect. This seems to be the latest animation, while the previous two look like leftover code that hasn't been cleaned up. Let's look at OriginOS notifications. Multiple notifications from the same app are stacked. Excess notifications are stacked at the bottom. The pull down has a layer bounce effect, which looks very pleasing. ColorOS combines them together. Excess notifications are also stacked at the bottom. The pull down also has a layer bounce effect, but the swipe up is blocked by a mask. Coming to the lock screen, when jumping to use apps, take a look at this animation. I would feel ColorOS does it a bit better. Visually, it attracts me more. When unlocking to enter the desktop, both have animations and there are no issues. However, when unlocking to enter an app, ColorOS here has an animation, but OriginOS has no opening animation. This is also something that confused me greatly after using the Origin system for a long time. Why is there surprisingly no opening animation here? That is all the content for this video. In the next video, I will bring you the comparison of functions. See you next time.